Shalom, sons and daughters of the Most High God Yahweh. I'm so glad you're able to join me again. Today, we're going to talk about warriors. And when that word is spoken, most of us think about Indians. You know, they were true warriors. I'm part Indian, a little, I'd say about a third. A lot of you out there have a little mixture of that too. But the important thing about that is I want to clear up some things. We hear a lot of people saying, oh, black people are always trying to say they're, Indians and they got Indian blood and, because they want to look like them. No, you know what it is? I believe a lot of people look at Indians because they were courageous. They fought like heroes. They defended their tribes and their babies and their children and their families. They fought to the death. For their lives and their culture. And yes, even though at the end, they were overwhelmed and finally defeated, they can look back on their history and say, you know what? We fought like heroes, didn't we? Our ancestors never gave in, never gave up. So I think that's the thing that people in America, African descent, people of descendants of slaves, we look back at that and we honor that. We look at it as something valuable, and it is. And compared to our enslavement and what our ancestors went through, of course, it's nothing compared to what we went through and our ancestors. However, after we got out of slavery, we did not fight any longer. We didn't, bring back the truth, bring back the laws. We didn't ask Yahweh to come and show us the way to go or how to fight to get back to where we needed to be. And so I think that sort of gives us a little feeling of we didn't do all we could. But now we have a chance to do what we didn't do maybe 60, 70 years ago. Our people sort of guided us back to this, let's join in with the pagan Gentiles and learn, how they do business, and we can start businesses and we can start this. And we saw even that didn't work, because even when things would prosper for our people, the pagan Gentiles were not happy. They hated to see us prosper. So obviously we were using a bad recipe in hopes to make a good outcome. So like cooking, you can't use a bad recipe or leave some parts out of a recipe and think that thing is going to miraculously come out to be right when you pull it out of the oven. And that's what our people did. And so I'm going to try today to stay on point and give you what God is giving me about you from this point on. Don't keep looking back. Don't blame the European Gentiles. Their judgment is coming and it's already on the horizon. Your job right now is to seek the Most High God Yahweh to see what is it He wants you to do. What is His plan? What is the game plan? What is the outcome? Okay, and so we're going to start with that today. Okay, Yahweh is sometimes in my videos, He has a word to speak to you about what He wants me to start off saying, a theme more or less. And He says this, Yahweh says this: the problem today is that my people do not realize they have rights. And we're not talking about, the little rights they try to make like they're giving us. He's talking about the divine rights as the chosen Hebrew children. Okay, he says this: you only listen to the ones you feel have power over you. You go where they say go, and you can't go where they say you can't go. But Yah is saying to you, there is no limits. There's no limits to what you can do when you turn to Him, when you humble yourself, when you trust and rely on Him. There is no limits. Okay. Now, first, I want to tell you next about a dream He gave me just a few weeks ago. And up until that point, he'd given me little pieces to a puzzle about some things. And I think I touched on it on one of the previous videos about Armed and Dangerous. It was about how God, Most High Yahweh, revealed that we got it sort of wrong when it comes to loving your neighbor, caring your neighbor, and treating him as yourself. We sort of got it wrong. So I explained that in other video. If you haven't seen that, try to go and you'll understand what I'm going to say next. So in him continuing to unfold this revelation of truth about this and about his holy chosen people, he gave me a dream. And in this dream, he showed me a few things. Okay, so the dream started out like this. There was a businessman, a white businessman. He was standing before me. It was as if it was someone I knew, but I'm sure it was just being used in that way. And I knew this guy, very powerful businessman. You know, when the rollers, you know, always popping, busy. And he's standing in front of me. And it was as if he and I had a relationship. Like a relationship that was going on, like, and it was evolving into like a marriage. But in my spirit, I knew that he was a crook. Like he was he was a cheater. He wasn't going to be faithful or do me right. I knew this. And so in this dream, we're standing in front of each other. And the next thing that happens is I see my arms and hands. They're full of these little perfectly square, it looked like diamonds, but they were perfectly square cubes. Just my arms was full, my hands were full. Seemed like some of them was falling over the edge of my hand, and I'm sort of holding them out towards him. He's happy. He's happy. He was like, oh my gosh, like, you know, he won the lottery. But I couldn't understand why he was so happy because to me, they were worthless. It's almost like somebody coming up to you in the yard and saying, can I have your leaves? They're so valuable. And you're thinking to yourself, no, you can have them. You'll do me a favor. I could feel this in the dream, how I felt about these cubes, just thousands of them in my arms and hands. And then something spoke. The Holy Spirit spoke in the dream. God Most High spoke and said, these are the Asher cuts. Asher cut. I didn't know what that meant, but I kept it, in my mind. And in the next part of this dream, I saw Yahweh Most High. And he came up, and beyond him, I could see some people that I knew, like black people, my people. I could see my sister's mother-in-law. She was a sweet lady, sort of heavy set, and some other people. And Yahweh, I usually see him looking like my dad, but that means my father. But I know instinctively it's not my dad because my dad is passed on and everything. So he comes up and he gives me a high five because I'm looking past him and looking at these people and sort of got this care in my heart because they look a little tired, they look a little worn. The older lady was sweating and exhausted. So I went over to her and I said, do you want me to get you some cold water and maybe a fan? My dad has some fans in the, in the church, in the house. Some of those church fans, I could go get you a fan. And she's like, yeah. And they seemed to be happy that someone was helping them. And so then as time progressed, I went on to find out later in the morning what this all meant. So I got up and I said, what in the world is an Asher cut? I've never heard of that. And what does it have to do with this dream? So I go and I start digging, trying to find out what this Asher cut is. And wow, did I find out a lot. Okay, so an Asher cut is a certain kind of cut for an expensive diamond. And it is, here's some of what I read. It is a 8-sided octagonal shape that often symbolizes rebirth and resurrection, and is frequently associated with the transition between heaven and earth. And Yahweh started revealing to me how the holy burnt bronze, I call them burnt bronze. I call us burnt bronze children because Yeshua HaMashiach is burnt bronze, so are we. The holy burnt bronze children are like a conduit between heaven and earth. Jerusalem is that portal, like I said on the other video, and we are sort of like that conduit. We don't realize this value we have, though. And so I went on to find out that the cut produces, this cut in these perfectly square stone produces a hall of mirrors, like a hall of mirror effect. It's just like a hall of mirrors reflecting off of each other. It's cut so precisely. And where this so-called Asher cut came from was, it was called the Royal Asher Diamond Company, and was founded in 1854 by the Asher family. And it was the most expensive cut of diamond you can have. Even today, people who, maybe going to get married and they want an Asher cut, they won't ever be able to get it because it's the most expensive cut you can get. Of course, you'd have to be like a millionaire or whatever, to get it. So in other words, this is the most priceless cut you can have. And what it looks like is beyond any other stone that you could, look upon. Okay, so it's the most rarest and most expensive. And so we are that Asher cut. The Hebrew children are so valuable. They're valuable in a physical point of view. They're valuable to heaven. They're connected to heaven. And what he said is this: we see no value in our brilliance and our power. And our power is taken and used by our enemies, who gobble it up. But we do not perceive it. We are in effect the gateway to heaven, descendants of heaven, yet used as slaves. We are not neighbors nor brothers until we understand and are free and care for our brothers. Notice in the second part of the dream how I took my attention, I focused it on our people and help them. And that was what it was meant by love your neighbor, love your brother as yourself. As I said in the other video, Leviticus was basically saying, your people, your tribe, take care of your own people. Now, let's move on from that. That was important because what I'm going to tell you next helps you to understand that value is important. When we don't place value on ourselves, from a heavenly perspective, you understand? Not like they tell us, the Amorites were like that. They worshiped themselves. They thought they were all this. They put down other people to push themselves up. And we can see that's the same MO in America. When we talk about the value of the burnt bronze chosen Hebrews, we're talking about the value as from heaven's perspective. When we understand our value and power from that perspective, we will no longer be under the foot as slaves under the wicked. You have to understand, we would have broke free a long time ago if we had understood what that dream was trying to tell me and reveal to us. When we don't see value, we just keep giving our blessings away. We keep giving our power away. We don't understand it. As long as we stand there in front of that businessman, that liar, that thief, that crook, commune with him, talk to him, think we can work with him, work for him, we are giving away our jewels. We're giving away our power. We're giving away the most precious thing on the earth. We are the Asher cut. Okay. And so coming back to the Indians knew their value, and they felt like, you know what? I'm going to fight to the death for what belongs to me. I know my value. Now, keep that in mind as we go on. Okay. So now God has some other things he wants to say to you. All right. And that is, and I'm going to read it off. Okay. Now, there's some misunderstandings that our people right now have, even the awakened have. They have a misunderstanding. They're being confused by a lot of false doctrines and purposely deceived by, some of these false prophets that are emerging for their own gain, just like the old church. You got to beware, people. There are people coming up for their own gain. They sound good. They're talking about the awakening and using Yeshua's name and Yahweh's name, but it's not, their motives are not pure. Okay, so I'm going to tell you some of the things that you know when you hear it that is not lining up with the word. Okay, God says this. Some of you are thinking that some kind of Moses is going to come along and scoop you up. But you see, you are the one who are the tribe of Judah. We're called to be that deliverer, that fortress of protection, defending Jerusalem and our people. And it's true people. God Yahweh says this, I am angry at my people. They have no allegiance, no fortitude, no courage. They sit down in their homes while my home is overrun by the pagans. Talking about Jerusalem. Yes, Jerusalem. The worst of the worst, the Canaanites who hate me and my son. You may ask, as the tribe of Judah, what can we do so far away from home? First, he says, change your heart towards Jerusalem and him. He said, I feel just like you do. In other words, he has feelings and emotions just like you do. I grieve over Jerusalem. She grieves over you, her children, daily. You must then be determined to no longer let this go on. Come home, await my command, humble yourselves to my will instead of your own. And I'm going to read this because it'll go fast if I read it. Like Abraham, who took Lot back. When Lot got taken by 5 kings who were warring against 4, Lot got caught up in the fray. Lot was Abraham's nephew. Lot was on his own. He had no way of being delivered. But Abraham strapped on his sword, went after his nephew and everything he had, and brought him back. Okay, so it says, in preparing for battle, it means no longer fearing man, but fearing and relying on Yahweh. Abraham had no fear of these kings who just got through waging war against 4 other kings. Come on now. When something is valuable, you should be willing to fight for it. And that's what Abraham did. We claim we're the descendants of Abraham, but Abraham was a man that knew how to battle. He knew how to fight. Where are we missing all of this? Okay. It means to be outraged and fired with zeal to the depths of your soul. The depths of your soul for what us and our ancestors let happen to Jerusalem. Now, you might remember this in the book of Maccabees. Mattathias, the old man who fought against the Greco-Romans who came in and tried to Hellenize him and his family and the village. It says he was fired to the depths of his soul. Instead of falling down and worshiping an idol, he destroyed, killed one of the Hebrews who went up there to worship, and the Greco-Romans who come up there to try to force them. So it means you will no longer stand by and do nothing, but that you will spring to action and answer the call, the war cry, warriors. If you are truly awakened, you now understand the vastly important act of restoring Zion, Jerusalem, and that it is the whole foundation in and of the reason for you being awakened. Come on now, y'all. What do y'all think we are awakened for? So that we can sit in America, let it fold over on us as it's being destroyed, kill, crush. Well, Daniel says many of those of the clay and the iron and all those representing nations are going to fall. And many of our people are going to be destroyed too. But what is the very reason for your awakening? You got to start asking yourself questions. And when you start asking yourself questions, God Yahweh will give you the answer. The very reason you were called and awakened to his name, to the laws, to the commandments, is so that you could come back, return to him and your land in Jerusalem. Now, I'm sure most of y'all say, well, we are understanding that, but we're waiting for Moses. I just told you. He's saying that's not the right plan. You need to get up out of Babylon and come home to await your king. All right? Okay, so now, YAH'S, that is why he gave you the breath. In the book of Ezekiel, from the 4 winds gave you the breath so that you could stand up on your feet and become a army. It didn't say become a businessman. It didn't say so you could build a new house. It says so that it would become an army. He needs you to fight to restore it, because when Adam was gifted the earth, it passed to you. You are its guardians and kings. Therefore, as the owner, you must defend the throne in Jerusalem from Yahweh's enemies, just as the angels defended their home in heaven. Now, in Revelation 12, it tells you how the angels they didn't care about their lives even unto death. Revelation 12, they fought for the kingdom of heaven. When Satan, the dragon, had come up there trying to attack that woman who was to give birth to the king, who will be the one ruling in Jerusalem, the angels knew they had to defend it because that was the next step in God's plan, the next step in renewing the earth and taking back his throne in the earth. And so these angels, it said, fought unto death. And I'm going to give you a word about this that a lot of us may not have heard of or know about. When you read in Revelations 12, and it's talking about they fought unto death, and they weren't afraid to give their lives up. In Hebrew, that word, it says, in other words, they were willing to die. It didn't mean they were necessarily going to die, but they were willing to die for the kingdom of heaven and the Lamb who had already shed his blood in the earth to break the curses on earth. So they knew it was their duty to fight for heaven. All right. So in Hebrew, that word is al-kudush hashim. It means a religious or moral act that causes others to reverence God. In other words, they not only were fighting for the kingdom of heaven, they knew by fighting, as it's written down in your Bible, that would give you the courage to fight for earth. That's what that means. Al-Kudish Hashim means to be willing to die for a religious moral act that causes others to reverence God. In other words, stand and fight for God as well. So if the angels fought, you should be willing to fight for Jerusalem. Okay, and for the restoration of God's kingdom on earth. The Most High Yahweh says, you cannot sit idly by and watch as Jerusalem, God's throne, is being defiled, trampled on by the pagans. Their filth and their wickedness has made a mockery of Yahweh and his holy son, Yeshua HaMashiach. That is why Yah's holy land is, believe this or not, I found this out just only a few days ago. Do you know that almost 70% of the people that live in Israel are atheists? I'll say that again. Almost 70% of the people that live in Israel are atheists. So we know that all of this distortions that, the people in America believe in, all this, the Holy Land, the holy people, that's not true. Well, of course, we know it anyway, because the word says the synagogue of Satan would be ruling there, parading themselves as Jews. But when you even look a little deeper and you start finding out things, you realize the facts back it up. How can almost 70% of the people that live in Israel today be atheists? Don't believe in any God? Are you getting what the Canaanites, they are basically the return of the Canaanites. They've taken that place over again and are running it into the ground. Okay. It has become like a Sodom and a Gomorrah, almost on the level of Sodom and Gomorrah. And that is also why they have kept the tribe of Judah locked away in a type of mental and economical bondage. And God calls it also like you guys are prisoners of war. When any country comes up against another country and fights and overruns that country, what happens? They take the people prisoners of wars. They take over that land for themselves. And from then on, the people that used to possess it live in a type of limbo, a type of prison. And even though today we don't have bars and we don't live on plantations, we're basically prisoners of war. Until you leave America, until you leave Babylon, you are